Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on Merrifield's Gardening Advisor. I think we have what's going to be an exciting show planned for you today because we have a special guest with us this morning, Dr. Mike Goatley from Virginia Tech, where he's a professor, researcher, extension specialist, doing a little bit all the above. Thank you so much for joining us this morning,
It's
Mike.
my pleasure to be here, David. Thanks for having me.
Right. Now, I know you've been working for like over 25 years specializing in turf, but maybe you can give us a little idea of kind of, where your interests are and also what you have in store for us today.
Well, I serve the state of Virginia as the extension turfgrass specialist, and I'm an agronomist by training, which means I do a lot of the soil science, plant science type efforts. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about all the things that you can be doing in your lawn affiliated with fall, because now's the time for most of us to get our lawns in great shape for 2014.
Fantastic, and like I said, the weather has definitely been on our side here. It's been absolutely perfect conditions. Great. Well, we're also going to be taking your phone calls towards the end of the program, so if you don't get all your questions answered over the next 40 minutes or so, then towards the end you'll have an opportunity to call in, ask Dr. Mike about anything with your lawn or any of your gardening questions, really. But before we really get going into this, I do have a couple quick announcements I want to make because our seminars are in full swing at all 3 of our store locations. These seminars are absolutely free. You just show up. They're a lot of fun, and we really, really like having a good turnout. Makes it more fun. More of you are there, the more fun we all have. So what we're looking at is at our Merrifield location at 10 o'clock this morning, Designing Gardens with Color. That's going to be taught by Mary Kirk Menifee. She's one of our many talented landscape designers, and she's going to talk about that design and how to incorporate the color in there. So you don't want to miss that opportunity if you are thinking about redoing or enhancing your landscape. That's going to be again at our Merrifield location at 10 o'clock this morning. And then immediately after the show, Mike and I are going to go dashing back, running as fast as we can back to the Fair Oaks store, where Mike, you're going to be making a presentation there.
Yeah, we're going to expand on some of the things that we're talking about this morning, but we're definitely going to focus intensively on fall lawn care topics to get them in shape for this fall and for next year.
Right. And I think it's nice with these seminars, it gives you that opportunity to have questions. So if you, I always invite people, hey, if you want to bring a sample from your lawn, if you're not sure what kind of grass you're growing, or you've got weeds, or you have a picture on your phone or something, bring it on down here. It's going to be your chance to meet with Mike and your state turf specialist, get some guidance on how to get your lawn looking fantastic. That's going to be at 10 o'clock at our Fair Oaks location. And then we've got another really fantastic and interesting class going on out at our Gainesville store, Photography and Flowers. Every gardener I know loves sharing photographs from their garden with people, and Karen Rexroad, who is a phenomenal horticulturalist and an extraordinary photographer, is going to share tips with you on how to really get the best pictures of your garden. So I tell you, it's tough. You got all 3 of those classes coming up. It's a tough choice to make, but best of luck to you deciding which one to attend. So all of those are 10 o'clock this morning. They're all free, and hope to see you there. Now, next week, our seminars are going to continue with topics like living walls, how to create that privacy with trees and shrubs, planting beautiful bulbs, because we do that now, so we have the flowers in spring, and then that's going to be followed out Gainesville with curb appeal, how to make your home looking its best. So lots of exciting topics. Hope we'll see you there. Pick up the brochure of this complete schedule at any of our stores. You can also go online and get the information there as well. Also want to let everybody know that we are going to be switching to our fall hours starting next week. As the days are getting shorter, we're going to be moving right along with that. So it's going to be starting Monday, we will be open from 8 until 7, and that's going to be Monday through Saturday. And then on Sundays, it will be from 9 till 6. Enough of these announcements. It's time for us to get into talking about lawns. That's what we're really here for today. And like we were saying, Mike, this is probably, I always say that to me, this is like the best month of the year to take care of anything with seeding, fertilizing. I mean, if you got problems in your lawn, now is the time to do it.
It really is. And when you get to these nice warm days, cool nights, this is an ideal time, especially those who are growing cool season grasses, fescues, bluegrasses, which are predominant in this area. This is a time to both to get them back into shape, restore them from a tough summer. This year's a lot of rain, but we're going to get them back in shape, and now's the time we've got the chance to do that.
Right. And I guess this whole thing begins with, first of all, deciding which is going to be the best grass for you to grow.
Yeah, we live in a very challenging environment in terms of picking a best grass, and a big part of my job is in doing variety evaluations, which are identifying those grasses which perform best. And we tag team, we partner with the University of Maryland in our research for these variety trials, because this is such a difficult region to pick that best grass, because we've got challenging winters, we've got tough summers. There really is, it's very difficult to identify best grass. We try to give people the best options.
Right, and I think you've got some pictures sort of illustrate what you're talking about.
I think we do. The big part, what you're seeing here, is this is part of my trial, is this is our one of our turf grass variety trials, and you see these blocks. These things go on for a period of typically 6 years, and we actually like to see the really tough environmental stress and pest stresses come in to hit these things, so we can identify which ones are performing best or not. And these data are all reported every year to our U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they're published online, and we develop from this, which we go to slide 2 here, is what we call our turf grass variety recommendation list. And Merrifield does a great job of utilizing this type of information that we have, which is identifying what these best varieties are.
Right, so you do run these trials and then you come out with a list, and this list that we're looking at here is available on the internet, right?
It is. It's available on our Cooperative Extension website. It gets updated annually, typically April or May. We meet with our University of Maryland colleagues and come out with the current year's list. So the 2013-2014 list is available online.
Right, and I think we have before we get into, well, what you're looking at right here, the tough play, this is it's a tall fescue mix with a little bit of bluegrass in there. That's typical what most people in this area are growing because of the heat and drought tolerance. And then a little bit of bluegrass mixed in there to give it that durability. So what I say is I always feel like I'm kind of a middleman in this whole process, because I look at the trials and once in a while I try to get down tech, evaluate those things, and we use the data and the information that Dr. Goatley and his colleagues are developing. We try to actually implement it and bring it here where it's available to our customers in Northern Virginia. And we've got a couple more slides then. I just want to go through, show what you're doing down there at Tech.
There's our variety recommendation list, and that's where you see the names of these best performers that are out there. And we can't guarantee anything, but in field trials, replicated research, this is as good as we have to offer.
Great. So like I said, we go through that list, we're selecting varieties, and then there's also some quality control steps there people can take.
Yeah, the seed world is kind of, you get what you pay for, so make sure you're buying high quality seed, make sure its germination date, its test date is within the last calendar year. If you find blue tag certified seed, that's great, but I'm very pleased that Merrifield's offering the best varieties that are available.
Yeah, and I also want to say we have a few different blends also, because sometimes when you don't have enough sunlight for growing tall fescue, we've got a shady mix, and then also sometimes if people want to go for sort of the premium quality but a little higher maintenance lawn for us, the Sunny is our bluegrass mix that's in there. So we take these trials and we mix them and blend them to meet different specific site needs. Great. Well, we're going to have to take a commercial break right now. That's just a little quick introduction, but when we come back, Mike's got a lot more information for you on how to get your lawn looking its best. Well, if you're just joining us this morning on Merrifield's Gardening Advisor, Dr. Mike Goatley from Virginia Tech is here with us today. He's a turfgrass extension specialist, sharing lots of good information on the research you're doing down there at Tech and how this is going to help you get a nicer, greener, denser lawn. So we talked a little bit about selecting the varieties that you've tested and evaluated and have shown the superior performance. So after we select our grass seed, what's our next step?
Well, we first need to prep our soil properly, because you can't just take the seed out there and introduce it over the top of existing grass. And one of the challenges is to get soil to seed contact. So what we've got is some tools that are out there, and some of these tools you're going to have to rent. This is showing what's called a vertical mower, and for many of you, you might also call it a dethatcher. And you see the blades on this unit, how they run down into the turf and into the top of the soil. So this one's going to bring up a lot of debris, but this is a great renovation tool for prepping a soil. You run this over your lawn, remove that debris, probably compost that debris, and this is going to create little grooves and slits in which you're going to drop the seed in. We'll go to slide 2 and I'll show you a prepped lawn. This lawn was actually tilled, so you can see that he's basically applying the seed down, and so we've got seed to soil contact without any questions being asked here. That's always the key to success, is to get that seed into contact with the soil. And go to slide 3, we're going to see a picture of the mulch being applied. So you're applying your fertilizer, your seed. Now we're going to give it a little bit of ability to hold some water. And our rule of thumb is to take a bale of good clean straw, whether it's wheat, barley, or rye, but about a bale per 1,000 square feet. And this is going to help conserve moisture and make that seed bed more conducive to germination.
Now, one question I get a lot of times, just going to interject, is not, sometimes if you don't want to go through renting and equipment and that type of thing, a smaller lawn, just going through there, I call it aggressive raking,
yeah, a heavy
or something,
garden rake.
right?
Yeah, sure will. Heavy garden rake, a garden weasel, a little tool we use in our vegetable beds sometimes to pull weeds out. Anything you can do to disturb that soil surface is what you're trying to do.
Because up here I have a lot of people with smaller lawns. I always say, I was teaching a class in Arlington County. They're usually saying, well, I've got 800 or 1,000 square feet. I go out to Prince William and they're saying, well, I've got 2 or 3 acres. So again, this is fantastic if you have the equipment to go at, but you could also just get out there and scratch it up.
A little hand labor can go a long ways in a small yard.
I say, when you get that good soil seed contact's the important part.
Absolutely.
So then we do it, we tear the ground up, we mix, you said, your fertilizer and stuff in there, we mulch it over the little straw.
Yeah, and this is what it's going to look like about 10 days after you've done your seeding. And so this is that same project we were just seeing in the previous pictures. This is about 10 days after planting. You keep it moist, don't keep it saturated. Usually run your sprinkler 2 or 3 times a day if you can, but keep it moist, and then you're going to see these grasses begin to germinate in most cases 10 to 14 days.
Well, and I get people all the time are asking me for specific watering instructions. I'm saying, hey, I can't give you an exact schedule, but can you even give us a rough idea what we need to do with our watering after doing the seeding?
Well, it's going to be lightly and frequently is our terminology for seed establishments, and then as that grass begins to germinate and expand, I tell people when you need to mow it, you need to cut the grass. And at that point in time, we start to reduce our irrigation down, and it becomes deeply and infrequently because we want the roots to explore deeper down into the soil profile. So as a rule of thumb, a lot of people during the the heat of the growing season, about an inch of water, whether it's Mother Nature or irrigation, that's what we need to keep most of these grasses green and actively growing.
And then if you're using that straw mulch, do you have any recommendations? You just use your mower to kind of mow it off, and you try to rake it out?
Certainly don't rake it out. No, just take the mower and chop up the organic matter and put it right back into the soil. Okay,
excellent. So let's go back where we left off. So you see, we just showed you lawn about 2 weeks afterwards, what you can expect. Now we've switched gears.
Yeah, you don't want to forget what the value sometimes is for installing sod. So here's a ready-made lawn, and with our new technology in which we can use what are called big rolls to install, you can cover very large areas very quickly here. And you see these gentlemen, they're installing big roll sod, and they're using rakes to pull it together so they don't have seams. But this goes from bare ground to instant lawn. And so people, a lot of times are afraid of the cost of sod, but a lot of times you figure up if you need something for rapid use, and I was talking with someone the other day that's got a wedding coming up and they needed a new lawn very quickly. Well, here's how you achieve that lawn in very fast fashion. So it's not necessarily a very expensive way to go when you look at the inputs required sometimes for growing in seed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. I always tell people, hey, that somebody's been growing that sod for about a year. They've gone through the grow-in process. They've got the grass established. They've gotten the weeds out. Put it down, immediate gratification. Okay, and then also we want to, again, promote the resources that are available to everybody through the Cooperative Extension Program.
Yeah, this is a group that I work for, and you see the website there, and so we very much appreciate if you utilize our information, because that's what everyone in Cooperative Extension about is distributing the information that all of our researchers are developing. And for me, a big part of what I do is tell folks in a way that hopefully you can understand kind of what myself and my colleagues, what we're doing down there at our research programs at Tech. So you see www.ext.vt.edu will take you to our Cooperative Extension homepage.
Right, and you go there and here's some of the things you're going to find.
Yeah, this one in particular for me is an effort that I'm making, and it's primarily developed for homeowners, and this is what we call our Turf and Garden Tips page. And I stock this with podcasts and presentations of anything that is seasonal. So right now we have a whole group of things that are specifically devoted to fall activities. So when you're trying to figure out what's going on in your lawn, what you should be doing, go to this page, Turf and Garden Tips, and we're going to keep you up to date on what's current for that season.
And I think they got another example.
Yeah, and this was one for any of the professionals out there. It's our Fertilizer Applicator Certification Training Program. It's a free online program that will allow people in the professional side of the lawn care business to become certified fertilizer applicators, which is now a requirement for most of our commercial fertilizer applicators in the state of Virginia.
And I think one more.
And this was one that all of us in this area are very excited because this is a new exhibit that is going to have a groundbreaking in November that's called the Grassroots Exhibit, and it's at the U.S. National Arboretum. And it's a 14 focus areas outdoor exhibit, which is basically emphasizing the value of what turfgrass actually has. And this will open up in the spring of 2014. It is a science-based exhibit. Everything that's there has to be peer-reviewed by the turfgrass scientists of the Crop Science Society of America, that it's valid in what it's saying. So it's going to be an outdoor exhibit. As soon as you walk into the Arboretum in the district, you're going to encounter this. We hope a lot of people are going to visit this over the next 4 years to really learn how to better manage their lawn and what values that turf grasses and your lawn can actually have for the environment.
Yeah. Well, they really are fantastic resources. I mean, I have to say I have a bias. You know, I'm a tech graduate and alumni. I also worked for the Extension program. I volunteer as a Master Gardener for Extension. But really, these resources, I'm always telling people, this is independent, research-based information that's available to you, already paid for through your tax revenues. So let's utilize it. And that's what I'm doing all the time at Merrifield Garden Center. We're talking about fall fertilization, using recommended varieties, soil testing, and all the other things we're going to be talking about in the next few minutes. This is just putting the resources to work in your own backyard.
It is.
Good. Well, we're going to have to take a commercial break right now, but when we come back, we're going to really show how all this applies to your home lawn. Welcome back to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor. We're talking with Mike Goatley from Virginia Tech about lawn care. Like I said, this is the time of year. I keep emphasizing this because you don't want to miss this season. You want to take advantage. The weather conditions are great. It's cool, it's bright, it's sunny. We've had some rainfalls. Really want to get your lawn in shape. So we just talked about selecting the grass seed, getting the soil prepared, doing our seeding. We're going to switch over and talk a little bit about the importance of some maintenance, like lawn fertilization to start with.
And one of the first things that we're showing here in the background is the importance and the value of a soil test. And we're using a soil test probe that you're seeing here, but this is not a tool that you have to have. You could use a shovel or a spade, but you want to go out and sample, say, 3 to 4 inches in your lawn, to 6 inches if you can, but most people can't with the soils we have in this area, and take about 10, 12, 15 samples from around your site, go down that depth, put it in a plastic bucket, mix it around, and that's what you're going to submit to the lab for testing.
Right, and I emphasize that composite sample because I remember at a field day I was down there that you were running, every 10 feet taking a soil test, and each sample was a little different.
Yeah.
So getting that composite sample. And these, say these soil tests, now that can be submitted. You can pick up the form and the little kits and applications at any of our garden centers, at least throughout Virginia, all this readily available, or they're private labs.
Yeah, there are private labs you can use as well to check. The prices are typically $10 to $20, and the information you get back is going to be kind of preventative medicine in terms of get this soil in shape in order to grow the best, healthiest plants possible.
Right, and I'm going to say kudos to the soil testing lab. I've got customers that are getting responses back and email responses back as quick as 5 days.
Yeah, that's one thing that has changed. Everything has become electronic now, so fortunately we're on top of that.
Right, so you can determine the fertility of your soil, and then based on those recommendations we have to start selecting a fertilizer.
We do, and a lot of times if your soil test says you need phosphorus, we're going to talk about more about this in a bit, but you want to apply what the soil test says, so make those recommendation applications. Lime might be necessary, and this would be the perfect time to apply the lime as well and do this, but that soil test is what's giving you the recipe towards success.
Great. Well, yeah, I think you've got some pictures here to illustrate that. I'm going to step out of the picture here a little bit because I know you got a bunch of stuff to cover and not a lot of time to do it.
Okay. Well, what we're showing here, this is a rotary spreader applicator. And in this case, we're applying, on the basis of the soil test, the nutrients that are needed. And one time that you might apply a fertilizer with phosphorus is in this type of situation here, in which we're going to put this material out. So this covers a lot of area fairly quickly. We'll go to the next slide. I'll show you a new emphasis point here in terms of our fertility. You see that middle number, 13013, means this is a phosphate-free fertilizer. And phosphate-free fertilizers is what we want people to be using more of these days on the basis of soil test says you don't need the phosphorus. Why would you apply the phosphorus? Phosphorus is one of our materials that contributes to poor water quality. So if we don't need it, there's a major emphasis right now to get people to understand, don't waste the money, don't waste the product applying something that's not necessary. Go to the next slide. This is from one of my colleagues at University of Maryland, Dr. Tom Turner. In this picture, we're seeing that the dark green that's immediately behind me, that is a soil that was treated with phosphorus as is required according to the soil tests. And on the other side, my right side, you're going to see that there's a soil that has not received phosphorus. The soil test said you need it. A lot of people are saying, oh, never apply phosphorus. No, you apply phosphorus on the basis of whether or not it's required according to the soil test. And this is a clear example of, hey, phosphorus was necessary in this situation in order to do the right thing for the environment. And this is something that I always tell people, you look and see what's going on here. I am brooming the material off of the hardscape. Because one of the biggest reasons that we have issues with water quality problems in fertilizer is that people apply fertilizer, it lands on streets or on sidewalks, things like that. You've got to get that material off of the hardscapes because where that is heading is straight into the stormwater. And so there's nothing easier than to brush it, to blow it, to broom it, get it off the hardscapes and get into the turf, and then you're going to protect water quality. Our next slide is this is another tool that we use in the fall. Now this is a more heavy-duty application you're probably going to be using in a lawn setting because this particular shot I took at an athletic field earlier this year. But this is core cultivation. It's a core aerator. And fall is a great time to get down into that soil, pull cores out, bring the soil up to the surface. What we're doing here is we're relieving compaction and we're also increasing the soil aeration because you've got to remember there's a lot of things that are going on down in that soil in terms of microbial activity. We've got earthworm activity. We've got lots of good things working for us. We want to keep those critters healthy and happy and doing their job for the turfgrass world as well. So fall is a great time for your cool season grasses to do core aeration. And we go to the next slide, I'm going to tell you the tip. You say, people are always asking me, how do you know whether or not I need to aerate? Well, it's as simple as a screwdriver. And if you go out to a moist soil, so it can't be saturated, can't be bone dry, but you take that screwdriver out, and if you can press it down into the ground 3-4 inches without having to really push and fight it, then that soil probably doesn't need to be aerated. So it's a strategy that I tell people you don't need to core aerate every single year. However, if it needs it, we certainly want you to aerify a lawn, and this is a good little basic tool to use to determine whether or not that soil is compacted. Let's go to another slide, and here is something that's a great fall tip in particular, and this is a mulching mower. And this particular mower is going to keep everything underneath that deck. And so what I'm showing in this picture, and this is how I use it in my lawn, is this is to basically grind up the leaves that are coming off the trees. And instead of having to rake or blow or bag these leaves and send them off somewhere for disposal, I'm just simply cutting them up right back into the lawn. And research at some of my sister universities has shown that basically if you can get the mower over top of these leaves to grind those leaves up, that's going to work out pretty well for you. There's not a lot of nutrient value in these leaves, but there certainly is a lot of organic matter, and we grind these right back up into the surface, so it's making it a little bit easier. Do them when they're a little bit on the drier side rather than being moist, and by all means wear the appropriate eye protection, ear protection, dust protection when doing this. I tell people don't turn your mower into a stump grinder, but use a mulching mower in particular to recycle grass clippings and leaves back into your lawn. And this is the #1 disease which comes into the Virginia Tech, Virginia Cooperative Extension Diagnostic Lab. And people tell me that doesn't look like a disease at all, but I'm like, yes it is. This is dull mower disease. And if there are, there's two things in my mind that typically come up with what are problems that people are directly responsible for. It's over irrigation and it's cutting grass with a dull blade. And here we're seeing the effects of what cutting grass with a dull blade looks like, because it is a nasty looking surface. This is very susceptible to disease. Your lawn's typically going to have a brown cast to it when you do this. So keep those mower blades sharpening, and on average it's going to take you 2 to 3 sharpenings a year to really cut a lawn the way it's supposed to be.
Great. Well, those are some fantastic tips that you're sharing with us. Now, one thing you talked about, the importance of fall fertilization, which fertilizer to use. I was hoping you could cover it quickly. how much fertilizer to use.
As our rule of thumb, David, we're looking for applying nitrogen-based fertilizers and probably something a little bit of potash. So that's the third number in the big three on the bag. And we want to use roughly no more than 1 pound of available nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per growing month. And in the fall, that's probably going to be somewhere between 1 to 2 pounds of nitrogen total, anywhere spanning from the end of September now on up into mid-November.
Right. So I guess my point I'm trying to make is you'll probably a lot of times, depending exactly on the fertilizer, want to consider a plant, fertilizing a couple times this fall.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to do it all at once because we don't want to overload the system, but about 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. And our extension web pages and information there, if you don't say, I don't know how to do that, then we've got that information that'll point you towards that, or come see us this morning.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to have to take another quick commercial break right now, but hang with us because we'll be back here in just a minute. Thank you for joining us this morning. Mike Goetwith from Virginia Tech's given us a fantastic rundown on things to be looking at in your lawn and getting it in shape and taking advantage of this fall season. So again, Mike, you're doing great over here. I'm stepping out of the way and going to let you continue with your talk.
Okay, Dave, we'll try. We're going to talk a little about weed control now. And I have behind me here pictured, these are some of the most difficult to control. At least 3 of the 4 are. These are all broadleaf weeds, and fall is a great time to go after broadleaf weeds because you've got a situation now in which most of your desirable ornamentals, your trees and shrubs and your flowers, your annuals are kind of on their last legs. Your trees, your shrubs are very hardened off right now. So we can use a lot of the herbicides that we can control things with much more safely in the environment now. And so out of these weeds that I have listed here, white clover is pretty easy to control. And actually, a lot of people want clover in their lawn because this is a plant that fixes nitrogen. So don't necessarily discount it. But for people that want to get rid of it, this is a fairly straightforward chemical with a 2- or 3-way broadleaf herbicide that you can control. This one, on the other hand, over here, common yellow wood sorrel. This is a very difficult one to control. You see that bright yellow 5-petaled flower? These are perennial broadleaf weeds that are really tough. So wood sorrel, creeping Charlie, which is otherwise called ground ivy, and over here wild violet. Again, these are 3 of the most difficult to control perennials. And we do have chemistry that's out there, but you're going to have to be more careful in your selection of those products, and you're going to have to make sequential applications. We actually refer to these 3 as the sequentials in terms of one shot is probably not going to get them. You're going to have to make multiple applications of a herbicide to take these out. But fall is the perfect time to go after them. Go to our next slide. I want to show you another thing that's going on in the landscape, and this is from our Turfgrass Research Center down at Blacksburg. And one of our biggest challenges in the fall in our research trials is if those trials have any white grub pressure at all, then you can have a visit from your local neighborhood skunk, and they can do things like this for you, which basically looks like somebody has taken a shovel to our research plots. So if you have woken up in the morning and thought that, wow, it looks like somebody's attacked my lawn with a shovel, you've probably had a skunk or a possum coming in for a nice tasty treat, and what they're looking for is grubs. Our ideal time to treat grubs in this area is typically mid-July to mid-August. But talking with my entomologist friends down at Blacksburg, people are telling me that if you have these types of problems showing up now, then one thing you can do is to apply a grubicide, an insecticide specific to grubs, to try to get these things under control and reduce this digging pressure that's being put on by these animal pests. They're foraging for the grubs. And we go to our next slide. This is a project that I wanted you to see a little bit about that we're doing with the University of Maryland and Penn State. And Dr. Mark Carroll at the University of Maryland is the lead, and Virginia Tech and Penn State are satellites. But this is very typical of what you encounter in terms of a new lawn site, a soil at a new lawn site, which basically has got a lot of rock, a lot of debris, and you want to get that stuff out of there, but it's never as good as it can be. And you're probably also working with basically subsoil type materials. And so what this project is doing is we're trying to demonstrate the value of properly remediating this site before we put the new seed or the sod on it. So we go to the next slide, and I'll show you one of our strategies, and that's to apply compost. And 10 years ago, we didn't use a lot of compost in turf grass management, but now we're really realizing the full benefits of utilizing compost. And in this particular research project, and this is actually on a home site in Maryland that Dr. Carroll's leading this part of the project, we're applying compost at a 2-inch depth to that soil. okay, and that particular lawn. And then this material is going to be incorporated to approximately a 4-inch depth. So basically, we're making a major renovation right up the front, but we know that this amendment is going to greatly improve the physical and chemical properties of the soil and probably make this a site that's going to be nice to maintain that healthy, great-looking lawn that you're looking for. Go to the final picture in this particular series. Part of what Dr. Carroll is doing, which makes this so unique, is that he has lawns that are basically managed using our new inputs of compost, and we're also incorporating what's called microclover in our research, a very small version of white clover that fixes nitrogen. But this is a monitoring station, and you see the water that's moving through this. Dr. Carroll is able to take this information and determine exactly what's moving in this water, nutrient-wise, downstream. And so we're trying to come up with systems that make our soils more receptive of irrigation, of rainfall, and if nutrients are out there, we want to keep those nutrients in the soil and not moving somewhere down the pipe here into somebody's water resources. And we go to our next slide. Might not have the next slide on this one, David. There we go. That was, oh, this one. Here we go. Compost application. Here's another benefit of compost. And in this case, what I'm showing you is that where the grass looks really poor, okay, all this area right over in here, this is 2 years into a project in which we incorporated 1 inch of compost into the soil prior to planting. This particular strip behind me here running this way, that one had 1 inch of compost that was incorporated into the site, okay, pre-planting, and you see the value of compost here, no compost over here. Again, it's a no-brainer in terms of what compost can do for you in your lawn. So again, if you have the ability to incorporate it, that's great. Go to our next slide. This is what it looked like at establishment, and you see the dark areas here of the compost. And again, all the way over here to this side is where we had the use your soil test, apply the lime, fertilizer as needed, but every other plot that you hit heading back in this direction, you see the benefits of having the compost in the incorporation. So compost is something we can certainly take use of.
Yeah.
And some of my colleagues in what they're doing, this is Dr. Irvin. Dr. Irvin's doing a water sampling project on several of the golf courses around the state of Virginia, because we're working very hard to try to show people that golf course turf, if it managed properly, is actually a boon to the environment and not a negative. And we go to the next slide, I'll show you another of my colleagues doing research, because this is a large portion of what we're doing down at Virginia Tech. This is one of my colleagues in plant pathology and weed science. This machinery is actually David McCall's. It's not David operating, but he's using basically remote sensing in order to predict whether or not that we need to make pesticide applications. And again, so very high-tech stuff going on here, trying to sense it remotely before you even know that you've got a pest that you would see. And we go further. This is Dr. Sean Askew, and you can kind of roughly see a few strips of dark green here. Dr. Askew is working on a project for golf course people, which for the first time we're probably going to have selective control of annual bluegrass and creeping bentgrass putting greens. This is going to be huge for all of you golfers that are out there that complain that you missed that putt because of that little bumpiness that was out there in that putting green surface. We've now got some newfangled chemistry which is going to allow us for the first time to control poa annua and creeping bentgrass greens.
Good. Well, it's really amazing to see all the research that's being done down there, and you can see how we're trying to get everything done in environmentally responsible ways. So, of course, we're just limited on the amount of time we have. So we're going to take a break, but we'd love to hear from you. We're going to start taking phone calls. So if you have phone calls about your lawn or the research or anything Mike's working on down there, or any gardening questions for me, just feel free to give us a call, 703-387-1046. Give us a call right now, and we'll look forward to hearing from you when we come back. Now we're going to get straight to the phone calls, and we have our first caller, David. How are you doing this morning?
Great, great. Good show as always this time of year. I enjoy this part of the show. Got a question about, I follow your regiment that you've been providing here for the past 2 years. In the spring, my grass is thick, green as can be, and for the past 2 years, it thins out and gets, I think, what they call brown spots. And I got a lot of dirt now and just patches that sort of look similar to some of those pictures you have there. And I'm wondering, this year I did put a chemical down for brown spots, but it didn't help, and I got a lot of bare spots in my lawn. Is it I'm choosing the wrong grass seed maybe, or?
I think, David, you represent what most of our viewers are encountering. So what do you recommend?
Well, David, it was a really challenging year because of the moisture we had. Right now we're very dry, but it was so wet for much of the year, and the disease pressure this year was tremendous. And brown patch is what we commonly call this, and most people in this area are growing tall fescue, and that's one of the Achilles heels of tall fescue is brown patch. And your efforts to treat it were probably right on, but this year our pressure was so strong that in many cases even our fungicides we're applying just simply weren't adequate enough to deal with it. There'd be nothing to do about it right now. What you'd want to do for now is to do something to prep that soil and to reseed those areas, because if it's been significantly damaged, there's not going to be enough potential for regrowth there that's going to come back in. So scratch that soil good, either with a heavy rake or with a vertical mower, and get your seed. And again, if you haven't done a soil test for the last 3 or 4 years, then do that. But don't give up the fight. It's just going to be an ongoing challenge in our climate, our transition zone climate, about finding that perfect grass. We're going to keep working for you, but that's exactly what you were facing. And this year's pressure was just so great that I don't think most people had much success with fungicide applications.
Great. Okay, I'll give it another shot at this year and see how it goes. I appreciate the info.
Good luck.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I always call that my managing expectations talk, where I say, welcome to trying to grow turf here in the transition zone.
Yes, we can grow 9 grasses in Virginia. We can't grow any of them very well, and that's a constant. Tell me the perfect grass. I wish I knew. I could probably make a lot of money if I did, but I don't know what that is. We work with the best choice for a situation, and that's what we got to offer.
Absolutely. Now, do we have another caller out there? Okay. Okay, let's see. I think Carol's calling. Okay, Cheryl. Cheryl, how are you doing this morning?
Fine. I have a couple of quick questions. You mentioned chopping leaves up in the grass. Does that change the pH? So do you need to add more lime if you do that? And could that take care of some of the composting you need to do in the grass?
They're not quite the same thing, Cheryl, as composting. And my colleagues, kind of talking to the folks in the forestry industry, they have told me that, that's something to pay attention to. But everyone said it probably won't really affect immediate change in pH. So I would say don't worry about pH change from grinding those leaves right back in, and utilize that carbon, the organic matter that's in those leaves. The one thing we tell people that you shouldn't chop back into soils, which has a much more drastic and immediate effect on pH, is pine straw. And a lot of people with pine trees would love to have the ability to just mulch them back in the surface, but you will see an appreciable lowering of pH if you cut pine straw back in, and it's very difficult to chop them up anyway. But the leaves, I don't think that'll be a big problem for you to worry about pH.
Okay, thank you. One other quick question, and that deals with addressing grubs. I've thought about using milky spore, and what would that do to the firefly larva?
Well, milky spore is target specific only to Japanese beetles, which is huge, and it's part of what the researchers are looking for when we're using any type of pesticide, to try to be more pest specific. It's both good and bad. From the challenge of what you're going to get is you're going to control Japanese beetle grubs, but it won't control the others. It should not have any activity on any of those other larvae that are there. So again, in many cases, a strength can actually be a weakness, but it won't affect those desirables that you're talking about.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for giving us a call, Cheryl. We've got time for one more caller, and I've got Jean calling in from Potomac. How are you doing this morning?
Very well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And how can we help you?
Well, I noticed on my lawn a large mound that is in serpentine style. And when I stepped on it, I sunk. So I'm wondering if there is a rabbit or what kind of, what the issue is there.
All kinds of lawn problems out there, Mike.
Yeah, this one is probably what Gene describes. It's probably either a mole or a vole. And moles are after earthworms, and grubs, they're after insects, they're insectivores, and they will tunnel and move across your lawn, and typically their damage to the turf is what they do in disrupting the root system. The vole is going to be eating vegetation. A lot of times you'll see voles that they'll appear around your flower beds, and they're particularly interested in your irises, in your daylily, in your bulbs that are out there. Now the control of them is a whole other issue. Neither one are very easy to control. There's not a quick chemical fix in terms of what we can do. trapping, then some people want no part of trapping, but traps are one way. A friend of mine has a dog that's a very good mole and vole digger to get them out, but if they're not causing extreme damage, what you can do is simply press that soil back in and you're probably going to be okay. Might need a little supplemental irrigation this time of year. If the damage is extreme, then traps are typically, they're spring-loaded traps, and for voles it kind of looks like a large mouse trap. Those are typically the way to go. And on our extension website, we actually have a group of people that are devoted to wildlife management, and they offer some helpful tips on how to possibly deal with these pests as well.
Good. Now, I'm just going to add to that, most of our customers are going the use of repellents because they don't want to use lethal means. And the repellents have been giving us pretty good success. That's something I'd love to see you guys do a little
It sounds like it's something
with.
We need to do some research on.
Yeah, great. All right, we're going to have
Thank you very much. You've been very helpful.
Okay, thank you for giving us a call. And we're going to have to take a commercial break right now, but we'd love to hear from you, so give us a call when we come back. And we've got more of the Gardening Advisor for you. Welcome back, everybody. Merrifield's Gardening Advisor. Love hearing from you, and we're going to get right back to our callers. And our next caller is Beverly. Well, good morning, Beverly.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, thanks for hanging on, and how can we help you?
There seems to be so many reasons there that the ground gets brown patchworks in the lawn. And this summer I noticed a lot of like little moss flying around in the lawn, and I'm getting a lot of brown patches. And doing a little research on the internet, it seems that I've identified them as being those sod web worms, and was wondering what to do about them.
Beverly brings up a good point. There's a lot of reasons your lawn starts to go brown.
And it's always a challenge to identify what that particular pest is. But the sod webworm, and you've done good research, Beverly, because you will see basically patches of grass where the worm is feeding around it. If you can go out there with a little bit of soapy water and pour the soapy water on there, and again, a lot of the worms have now gone through their final stages of transformation to the adult, the moth that you'll have out there. In the morning time, you should see a cottony-like web of mycelia on top of this. It's not a fungal mycelia, it actually is kind of a web that the web worm is spinning. Pour a little bit of soapy water and do some detective work out there and see if you can get the worms to emerge from that site. They're feeding on the foliage of the grass. They're going to eventually, they're converting into moss. And most of them, I'm suspecting they've already made that conversion at this time of year. But check it to see. There are several insecticides that are going to basically be applied to the soil and watered in that will give control. So make sure that you're making an application now that is justified, because sometimes the pest has already done everything they can. But your research, it sounds like you're right on target to what you've got. But do a little inspection and pour some soapy water and see if you can get anything to emerge from the soil. That could be a worm that you possibly can identify. Then you'd know that you're treating this pest, and you can make an appropriate application of an insecticide.
Excellent. Well, that sure is some good, helpful information, and thanks for giving us a call. And we're going to move on now. I've got Lisa calling in from Newmarket. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
I always thought lawns was like an all-male thing, but here we've got all these women calling in. But this is good. I like to see that.
The men are getting ready for football today, David. They don't have time for their lawn.
Okay.
There you go. Now, my question is, in my backyard, normally it's very green, plush, and doing fine. Just this year, and I've been here over 11 years, there's a center strip of nothing but brown grass. It's just dead. You can pick it up. And there's no grubs. There's nothing under it that I'm seeing. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I need to dig it all up and reseed, or should I aerate? I don't know what to do at this point, but it's pretty long and about 2 foot wide. It's just kind of bizarre.
And there wasn't anything in terms of any lines or anything like that, Lisa, that you can identify that there was anything buried there?
No, nothing.
Then I do a little detective work and try to figure out if has this been anything from the previous. And tell you one thing in which a lot of people in the past, and you never know exactly what's going on, but even soil sampling from that site and comparing your soil test results from that site to the surrounding areas that look good, that would be a great investigative tool to do that, and would only cost you about $10 to do. I would definitely plan on doing something to disrupt that site now by taking a vertical mower, or even setting your mower down as close to the ground as you possibly can, scalping that material off, raking that, and going ahead and getting some seed. But I would want you to do your soil test to make sure that you have corrected anything that might be going on there.
Okay.
Because again, if that is the problem, you could seed and you wouldn't get any satisfactory results. But I'm hoping maybe it's just something specific to this year for why this showed up. But oftentimes when I see straight lines like that, we know Mother Nature doesn't kill in straight lines, so there typically is something that a human element, some form or fashion, has done. But it's very difficult to figure out just what that is. So try a soil test first of all and see what might happen.
Okay, and then when I do reseed, to rake it up and whatnot, mix it with compost, or what's the best for the reseeding?
Yeah, that would be great. And to get a little compost, we basically say for over-the-top applications, about a 1/4 inch depth of compost is ideal. And compost in conjunction with aeration, in conjunction with seeding, I tell people if you can do that 1 to 2 times per year to your lawns, you will eventually start transforming these really poor quality soils into something much more desirable to grow all of our plants in.
Yeah, because it seemed this year to have a lot more weeds than I've ever had.
I hate to do this, Lisa, but I'm going to have to interrupt because we're going to run out of time, and I want to get this last caller. And I'm also going to say, hey, talk to your husband, find out what he's been applying to the lawn.
That's right. Make sure he didn't apply something in that strip.
Great. Well, I really want to get this next caller in. Ann's calling in from Alexandria because I know this is going to be a question many of us get, and we're going to have to try and make a quick answer here. So how are you doing, Ann?
Good. How are you?
Doing great.
Thank you so much for all your helpful information. I was just wondering if they've come up with any newer products that might help us get rid of our Bermuda grass and keep our neighbor's Bermuda grass from reinvading our yard.
And you have to give us like a 30 or 45-second answer.
It's a tough one, Ann, but yes, and the research in this area continues. And what we've got this year for the first time now, and the challenge is that this chemistry is not yet available to most homeowners, but there is a new product that just come on the market. Its fancy chemical name is topramazone, and we're taking that material in combination with the product that you do have available to you called Turflawn. And this combination in Dr. Askew's research is taking our level of Bermuda grass control to one that we haven't seen before. It's still not absolute, but it's very good. So, and keep checking our website, and we're going to have more information for you on that difficult problem.
Great. Well, I'm sorry. Thanks so much for being here. We're going back to the seminar. Come down, see us, and we'll be here next week. Peggy will be back.